Hello everybody, I'm delighted to have on the rugby bunker for this episode, Rob KItson of The Guardian. Rob, hello, how are you?
Hi, nice to be here. Fantastic. How exciting. Very exciting.
Listen, it's a bold new era. Rob, you've been in the rugby union journalism game for a very long time. Just give people who aren't familiar for how long that exactly is, just how long you have been involved with the Guardian.
I think they were doing podcasts in 1892. So around. No, I've been the Guardian's rugby correspondent since 1999, which does date me slightly, but young at heart.
I think it's the 99 aspect that if it was 2000, it wouldn't be as good. The fact that it's 99, there's something about that which is pretty great. I'm fully invested in that. Listen, we're recording this, Rob, on a bit of a sad day. Really, to be honest, I think the plan was to just discuss the weekend's Prem Rugby action and a few other things, but the news sort of emerged this morning about Lewis Moody, his diagnosis of motor neurone disease, which is just, I think, collectively rocked everybody in the game, former players, journalists, everybody, fans as well. What's your first thought about that news and the reaction that you've seen?
Well, first and foremost, we just send all our love and best wishes to Lewis and his family. You know, it's easy thing to say on days like this, but I think as you say, we really are all behind you, Lewis. And I mean, words in a way clearly can't struggle to do justice to sort of these on these sorts of occasions. I've written 900 of them for the Guardian a little bit earlier, and these are pieces you absolutely don't want to write. So no, I think it's not an exaggeration to say that you won't find anybody with a bad word to say about Lewis. He's an absolutely cracking guy. I've been lucky enough to see all of his career. He was a columnist actually on the Guardian for a little while. So we collaborated on a column that I think this must be in the annals out there somewhere. It's I think, as Lewis has said, it's one of those days when you go, gosh, let's talk about the guy we know, the guy we all love, the guy that we familiar with. Maybe tomorrow or the next day after, or heaven forbid, when things get a bit tricky with all down the track, then there's other things we can talk about. But for the moment, you just want to celebrate Lewis, tell him what a great guy he is, or just reassure him that there's so much support for him out there. And just as I say, it seems a bit surreal, really, because we it was a bit of a jolt for everybody to wake up with on a Monday morning, but not half as much of a jolt as he would have had, clearly, with the diagnosis.
Yeah, horrendous. I think we've become so not used to players being diagnosed, but we're so much more aware of it now and sort of used to the kind of how it progresses and just how devastating it can be, because we've seen it in Rob Burrow and Doddy Weir and with Ed Slater, that it's still, when the news sort of drops, it just hits you so hard. The fundraiser that's been set up by Jordan Murphy, I'm very pleased to see, is already over 40,000 in less than 12 hours. And I'm sure that number is just going to skyrocket even further. It's a very moving interview by Lewis and sat alongside Annie, his wife, on BBC Breakfast, chatting to Sally Nugent, talking about how he found out, how he sort of had a bit of weakness in his shoulder, went to get that tested by physio, and how it developed into neurological tests and the dreadful diagnosis where we are now.
We processed lots of emotions over the last couple of weeks. And I suppose when you talk about it, and I generally feel fine when you talk about it, it's never me that I feel sad for. It's the sort of sadness around having to tell my mum, having to tell the boys. I mean, two brilliant boys, and that was pretty heartbreaking, wasn't it? But I don't want to get stuck in the negativity or the doom and gloom, and I want to stay positive. I want to, stay in the moment. I want to learn and understand what it is. I want to speak to more people and see where we can help as well. And hopefully, another couple of challenges left in the body yet. It's still working. It's still with me, and until there's a point that, it isn't, I suppose, hopefully there'll be some suits available at that point that I could jump into. But the future's uncertain at the minute, I suppose, isn't it? So that's why we're just focused on now.
There's a quote from him which stuck out, which is where he said, I don't want to get stuck in the negativity or the doom and gloom. I want to stay positive. I want to stay in the moment. I want to learn and to understand what it is and speak to more people and see where we can help. I think that last bit, see where we can help. If you think about what he's going through, for him and his wife and his two boys to then be thinking about, how can we help with the research for this? How can we help with the fundraising for this? What can that kind of sums up the guy we're talking about, doesn't it? I think that's what's really struck me today.
Well, there are clearly no positives, but if there is a tiny sort of little bit of light, it's that people like Lewis, Doddy Weir before him, Rob Burrow, obviously, Jus van der Westhuizen. These are incredible people, and they've inspired so many people with their courage and their resilience and all those sorts of words. And I, as I say, it's really hard to talk about. I feel almost I'm not a medic. That's the first thing to say, and there's also important to say that not only rugby players get motor neurone disease. There's clearly the research is ongoing, but I happen to know two other people with motor neurone disease not far from where we live, and neither of them have ever touched a rugby ball. So there's lots to it. There's a lot of science and stuff we don't know. All you can do, as I say, is just send all our best wishes and celebrate the man who is still here, and salute everything that he has done, and hopefully all the stuff, the inspirational stuff that he can help with in the next months and years.
Yeah, there was that one study 3 years ago, wasn't there, by the University of Glasgow, which I think 400 players were consulted, and they found that there was an increased risk of developing the condition. But we're in such kind of primitive research stages, and there's so much more to be done that it's very hard to kind of draw that conclusion as immediately as some people may think it's obvious. It's not, as you've just alluded to. Talk to me about Lewis the player. Talk to me about Lewis kind of herring around the field. He's just one player who, I rarely think this watching players, but when growing up particularly, you would see him just flying after people or into situations, and you'd think, don't do that, because that's you're gonna suffer for what you're doing. But he did it regardless, and you don't earn a nickname like Mad Dog Moody without having that attitude, do you? What was he like to cover and to watch?
And you don't win 71 caps for England by accident, and you don't go on a British Lions tour by accident. And actually, if you stuck a sort of big blonde mop on Tom Curry and sort of transferred him to Leicester, he wouldn't be a million miles away from that sort of, indestructible, in brackets, of course, or sorry, quotation marks. We know what we're talking about here. Nobody's completely infallible, but he was it, and he would charge around in it, and I think he would give energy to all his teammates. Martin Johnson, when he retired back in 2012, Martin Johnson said that he always thought of Lewis with a smile on his face, just because of the sort of irrepressible way that he played his rugby, and also for the commitment was clearly off the scale. I really enjoyed it. As I say, we did collaborate a fair bit. I particularly remember when England won the World Cup, and clearly this big column that we were going to have to write on the Sunday morning. So I went up to the Manly Pacific Hotel in Sydney, and as you can imagine what the scenes of carnage were like. And I found Lewis, and I said, "Brilliant, Lewis, this is going to, what can you remember about the game? Let's tell the readers everything about the World Cup final." Lewis, he had it was a magnificent moment. Let's just say the recall wasn't absolutely sharp. Can we put it that way?
I think I'm glad to hear that in a way. Actually, I'd be disappointed otherwise, to be honest.
But if you look back on that final, England winning the World Cup, there he is, absolutely in the thick of it. We sort of sometimes forget. We go hill back to Lalio. We forget that there were some other people on the pitch by the time the sort of extra time loomed into view. So no, he will go down, and always I did at the time when he retires as one of the. I think he's one of those guys who people remember. I compared him in print, not entirely without reason, to Jean-Pierre Rive of France, not just because of the hair, but because of just the sort of spirit and there's always a fair bit of blood around, and as well as the blonde hair, but just the sort of spirit that he that sort of emanated from him, and what he did for the guys playing with him, and obviously you could see him. He stood out on a field of play. So no, I've got to say I really enjoyed covering him. They loved him obviously at Leicester, Bath. Later in his career, I think they've loved him there too. England, as I say, the Lions, all the way from Bracknell Minis. He had an Oakham as well. He had an amazing career, and I think everywhere he went, as I say, you'll struggle to find anybody who could find a bad word about him.
I only have a small sort of anecdote of him kind of post career, which was a couple of years ago. I was trying to I was trying to track down somebody for an interview, and I realised that this person had been at one of Lewis's kind of hospitality dinners that he ran, and so I genuinely sent sort of as Rob, you will know from your days of trying to track people down for interviews, a real flyer of a text saying, look, in the off chance if you could chat to this person to set up something or let them know I'm trying to get in contact, I'd greatly appreciate it. And quite often you won't get a response to those messages, and that's fine because you know they're a little bit kind of cheeky, or you might just get a no, which again, fine, because you appreciate the circumstances. And Lewis very, very kindly said, yeah, look, let me try and go out my way to set this up. And even when it didn't happen, and I said, and I sort of tried to haggle through Lewis as like this interview negotiator, which is a ridiculous situation to put him in, was still humouring me and seeing how if he could try and make it work. Not everybody does that. A lot of people will just say, look, it's not gonna happen. But he genuinely really went to such an effort to try, that I think when people do throw around stuff like, oh, he's one of the nicest blokes in the game, oh, he's one of the best people in the game, it's not just words like that. There is a lot of truth to that, and there is that enjoyable paradox between him being this lovely bloke off the field and then just absolutely melting people on the field, isn't there? I think in particular it's in the Lions series against the All Blacks in 2005 off a restart or a high ball, he just absolutely clattered into somebody, and it was either Richie McCaw or Marty Holler, and I can't remember, but that kind of ferocity which we love in the game.
I've never seen a tape, a compilation. I'm just already sort of wincing at it. You put together, and I'm sure somebody has been putting one together today, maybe. But yeah, I as I say, I prefer to remember. Yeah, I remember him as the human being, and the somebody who, you know, you walk into a room and he's the kind of guy who would make the room, you know, a little bit warmer and a little bit nicer to be in. And you know, I think beyond anything that actually happens on a rugby field, that's a great legacy to carry into, as I say, his next big challenge.
Yeah, I think the final point just to make on Lewis before we move on is just to stress the importance of all the fundraising work that's going on, and the amount of kind of funding that's required for the research to make a breakthrough in conquering this just awful disease. There is one drug called tofersen, which they've seen some kind of reaction to in terms of slowing down motor neuron disease and potentially in some cases reversing it, but that only works in 1 in 50 patients. So there's so much work that needs to go into finding a cure for this. So it's really heartening to see the fundraiser growing great guns on day one. If you want to donate, the link I'll put it in the description on the video, but it's, if you search GoFundMe Lewis Moody fundraising appeal, I'm very pleased to see that the money's rocketing up, and yeah, Rob, as we've said, just a very sad moment, a very poignant moment. It's been heartening to see all of the 2003 lot rallying around him, Leicester teammates running around him, current players, recently retired players as well. So yeah, very sad news. Let's take a quick break and then we'll chat a little bit about the Prem Rugby from last weekend. Okay, Rob, I want to chat a little bit about last weekend's Prem Rugby action. Just nailing it. I haven't said Premiership now for days, for episodes. It's coming out of me perfectly, this Prem Rugby branding. You, as I understand it, were at Bath against Sale, which is always funny when you're in the press box and it's a wet night because you're looking at the people opposite in the stand, which is uncovered, just kind of hanging on for their lives. I imagine it was like that on Friday night.
Well, I met a couple of Sale supporters just before the game, and we were having a chat, and I said, I hope your waterproofs are all right. And they said, don't you worry, we've been here before. It's, a bit we don't really discuss. Yes, they're brave in the elements. Yes, it's ridiculous really, but they're paying, best part of £100 for the privilege. And so to be honest, the sooner they can get that new stadium, which is clearly permission is, hopefully they're dotting the I's and crossing the T's as we speak. Yeah, I think, to be honest, the time has long come. But yeah, no, it was wet, it was windy, it was interesting. I mean, Bath didn't have it, and they're all their own way. I think Sale, Alex Sanderson was frustrated afterwards because they did a lot of things quite well, but just little mistakes, little bit of discipline, couldn't quite sustain it. And we all know what Bath are like in the last 20 minutes or so. So in the end, it was a sort of expected plot, and it all panned out, and they got the bonus point with Max Ajoma at the end. Ben Spencer was great. It was, yeah. I mean, on the one hand, you'll think, well, blimey, Bath are going to be even better when it dries up a bit, when Santi Carreras is fit, and obviously Finn Russell will be back ever so shortly. It was ominous, I would say, for the rest of the field, because Sale really threw it at them physically, and Bath were dented. They had 2 or 3 injuries, which might be longish term. We're not quite sure how they're going to pan out. But yeah, it was a dark old night in Somerset, and not one I don't think that people are going to, if you're outside Bath, that you're going to be all that encouraged by.
Oh, look, it's Monday afternoon. I'm sure people have dried out by now. Yeah,
Yes.
losing Quimbrou and Charlie Ewells isn't great because they were such a key, consistent pairing last season, weren't they? When they won their treble, that I'm sure I don't think we've had an update yet at the time we're doing this, but that'll be key. And Ted Hill got a bang as well. Great for you to be able to watch a George Ford drop goal masterclass as well. I can't decide which one I prefer.
Well, I think the last one, the first one, as I say, was really quick thinking. The second one, execution wise, was unbelievable in the conditions and everything else. So yeah, I happen to, it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes we're on the way home and you're in Bath and it's midnight, and I stopped off to fill up the car with petrol, and who should be filling up his car with petrol but George Ford in the garage. So I had obviously a bit of a chat, and I said to him, I said, I don't know how you did that. That was properly impressive. And he well, this is before I was going to buy him the crisps and chocolate, or he was buying water, and I said, look, I can help you out here. He was lamenting the fact that it was so wet after they'd had a really dry week's training, beautiful dry ball, and they were really hoping to play a little bit more, I think. But yeah, it was, George Ford was excellent. Nathan Jibulu was clearly promising, and yeah, they did throw everything at them, Sale, but it wasn't quite enough.
It's accuracy, right? I think that's what Alex Sanderson said afterwards. He knows he's got a team who can be in an arm wrestle, scrap in an arm wrestle, and intimidate teams physically, but just that kind of those final few touches and flourishes, and yeah, I'm sure their attack will come. They've got talented players. Tom Roebuck is excellent. If this was the 90s, George Ford would be releasing like a drop goal masterclass on VHS or something, and it would sell like hotcakes. Like kids up and down the country would be watching it and taking it in. I'm sad that I don't think it has the same reach on YouTube, sadly, which is a bit of a shame.
He's almost too modest, almost, isn't he? I always think he sort of pitter-patters, doesn't he? And it's all done with such economy. There was a moment, I don't know if you saw it, down in the coffin corner, as we used to call it, down in the bottom left-hand corner. He was in deep trouble, bath cover bearing down on him, and he feinted one way, went the other, and then kicked a really good clearance with his left foot up the touchline, and you're going, well, blimey, they can't get him whatever he's doing. He's one step ahead. If I was a Sale supporter, I wouldn't feel so discouraged in the long run. I still think they will be a playoff team and probably could make the final as well. But Bath are just the team. They're the team to beat, aren't they? They have the best depth and the best talent, and they get Finn Russell back this week. Let's chat a bit about Exeter, because I know you are just down the road from Sandy Park, and last season was a slog for the Chiefs. I mean, I think we both took in a few games where we questioned what they were doing, particularly the Bordeaux game in the Champions Cup springs to mind. That was a particular kind of nadir. So far, unbeaten in 2. Lovely comeback at Northampton and comprehensively put Newcastle aside. What do you make of Exeter's early prospects? I suppose it couldn't get much worse, but this certainly seems to be trending the other way. Yeah, I suppose if we were having this conversation at half time in Northampton, it wouldn't be quite so positive, would it? I think it's still early days. I think clearly there needed to be a bit of a reset. Rob Baxter would be the first to say that. Clearly, there's been a reshuffle behind the scenes. Not all of it amicable, particularly. I think there's several elements. I think nothing lasts forever. They've had an unbelievable long run of consistency and solidity in those coaching positions. And in the end, if it's not working, you've got to change something. Now, yeah, I think it's really encouraging for them that it has started nicely. I mean, clearly Newcastle at home is a good fixture to have early on, maybe in their situation. We've probably got to wait 2 or 3 more weeks for a little bit more evidence. But yeah, if you look at them, and the bottom line is that Exeter, when they're playing really well, they've got a pack that really, sort other teams out or can live with any other team and be dominant in different areas of the field. And so that's a key element. And there are signs that they're getting that back, that sort of real steely core, if you like. Then once they've got that, Stephen Varney's had a nice little start, hasn't he? They've got threats out wide. Henry Slade's back. As I say, they've got the Aussies are on the way, Lenny Katow, Tom Hooper. So you sort of add it together and you go, yeah, and this is where they want to be. I don't think they're claiming that they're going to be automatic playoff contenders from year one, but I think they definitely want to improve on obviously what happened last year.
Yeah, for sure. I think the expectation is that Lenny Katow might play next week. I think he's arrived this week, but he might feature next week. And look, you've got a very beaten up Bristol side this week. You've got Quins at home next week, which I think they'll be circling as a strong chance to get a win and maybe a bonus point win. Look, that's potentially after the first 4 games, you're going to be in a very strong position, which is very exciting. And Rob Baxter, his buzzword during the pre-season just seemed to be accountability. Like he just wanted accountability from his players. So I'd love to imagine, as you've hinted, what it was like at half time in Northampton when they were trailing by a hell of a lot, and then look what a turnaround in the second half. Well, listen, part of the reason I brought up Exeter is to chat about Exe Men, which is your book, but it's no longer just a book, Rob, because you're advancing into new markets. Tell me about what's happening with Exe Men.
Well, modesty forbids on these occasions, but you've got me bang to rights, though. So I did write a book called Exe Men, and staggeringly, somebody in the Northcutt Theatre in Exeter read it and enjoyed it and thought it might make a decent play. And so they phoned me up and said, "What do you think?" And I said, for a nanosecond, I thought, well, yeah, it sounds fun apart from anything else. And so they got in touch again. I mean, I'm not, it'll surprise you to hear, William Shakespeare. So they needed to get somebody who could properly write that sort of thematic structure and what have you. And so they got somebody called Ashley Farrow, who some people will know as a co-creator of Life on Mars and Ashes to Ashes, which are those great BBC programs from about 20 odd years ago. And he's just brilliant. Him and Martin Berry, who's the creative director at the Northcutt, they've turned it into something beyond my wildest expectations. It's, imagine when I don't know, it's almost like somebody, if you write an essay or something and then the teacher grabs it and says, "I think I can make a few improvements here." Ching, 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 ching. Boom, and out it comes, and you go, oh, well, that's cool. That's called a level up. I hadn't really. It is. It's ascended. My very. I obviously you put a bit of work into a book when you write it, but I knew that it was a great story. It's always been a great story. That's sort of the reason for writing it. But to have it translated into another art form is a novelty for me and an absolute joy and a privilege, really. I've just been down in the theatre this afternoon. They're just putting the finishing touches, and all I can do is say that it's good fun. We had Tony Rowe in to watch rehearsals, and there's the guy playing Tony Rowe. There's an actor called Tim Hudson. He looks more like Tony Rowe than Tony Rowe does, and so we did. I was sat next to Tony, and he. I thought he might have a heart attack from laughing so much. So the good news is it's got funny bits, it's got sad bits, it's got highs and lows, as you might expect in the sort of story of Exeter's rise from nowhere to winning the European, the domestic double in 2020. So there's a lot in there. I think not just hopefully for rugby fans, but for fans of a good story and for theatre lovers in the West Country.
Surely there's a role carved out for you in it somewhere as spectator number 2 or something where we can get you on stage and invested. I mean, come on. I'll be very disappointed if we don't see you in it.
Well, for some reason, Brad Pitt's people, they haven't been answering their phones, playing the sort of balding journalist from the Guardian. They haven't got hold of him. They haven't sort of grasped that particular opportunity yet. But no, it has been great. It's great. So they've got a community cast of 30 odd actors from the local area, and the idea is that it's a Southwest community play, and I really wanted it to big up the Southwest. It doesn't necessarily get a lot of attention always in the news or on screen or on stage. Obviously, with 1 or 2 notable exceptions, but it's just. I think, again, a lovely thing to be involved with. They've got, as I say, the professional actors. They've got they've done out the stage in the Northcutt with a pitch, and there'll be posts, and there'll be one or two surprises, a bit of music in there as well. It's I mean, I was blown away when I saw the rehearsal, and maybe I would say that, but that's honestly how I felt. And so I really hope people enjoy it.
Oh, it must be fascinating to see something you've worked on come to life in such a different way. And I guess just to touch on it, and the book as well, the subject of it, when Exeter first sort of came up and cracked through into the Premiership back in, wait, if it's retrospective, can I call it the Premiership? Yeah, we'll allow it. When Exeter were first promoted back in 2010, it must have been fascinating for you as someone who'd been a national journalist for so long by then, and to see kind of a club literally kind of in your area down the road, sort of mixing it with the biggest teams in the country. And they started with that great win on the first day against Gloucester, I want to say. I mean, that time must have been very special.
Well, it was a complete, happy coincidence, because a lot of my family are from the West Country originally, and my wife's in the West Country, and we moved back down in 2010, about literally 2 or 3 weeks after they got promoted in that big night in Bristol. So it was just serendipity, really. They, suddenly, as you say, there's a big club down the road. Suddenly you go down, and it's immediately obvious I've got some, amazing characters down there. They're a team on the rise. It doesn't take a genius really to go, oh, this is a good story. And yeah, I mean, I was just really lucky. They did all the hard work, clearly all the hard yards, and I sort of scribbled down a few notes here and there, and very lucky to cling to the coattails of greatness.
Oh, listen, but when's opening night? When does the play start?
Well, they've got the first night with the public is actually Tuesday night, but the big red carpet press launch, I'm not sure they have a red carpet next to it, but the big launch is Thursday, and it's on till the 18th of October.
Well, Rob, best of luck with it. I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. Thank you very much for coming on today and for covering many various topics. I will see you very soon.
Pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody. Yes, that is a significant fish behind me. The programs have gone. A massive thank you to Rob. I've got links in the description to his article on Lewis Moody, the Lewis Moody fundraiser. Please, if you can, consider supporting it. It's for a very worthy cause. And we'll be back later this week to chat about the Prem. See you then.